The year is 1996. The Cold War is over. America stands triumphant, the sole superpower. Yet beneath the veneer of victory, a deep unease festers. The gap between the rich and the poor widens. Working people struggle while corporations prosper. This is the backdrop against which we must understand the concept of class warfare. It is not a product of radical ideology, it is the lived reality for millions. Class warfare is not a new phenomenon. It is as old as civilization itself. From the slave revolts of ancient Rome to the peasant uprisings of medieval Europe, history is replete with examples of the oppressed rising up against their exploiters. What is perhaps different today is the sophistication and scale of the exploitation. We live in an age of unprecedented corporate power. Global corporations, unaccountable to any single nation, dictate the terms of our lives. They ship jobs overseas in search of cheap labor. They gut social safety nets in the name of profit. They buy politicians and rig the system in their favor. This is not a sustainable model. When a tiny elite hoards the wealth of nations, when the basic needs of millions go unmet, the social fabric begins to fray. We see this in the rise of political extremism, in the opioid epidemic, in the despair that grips so many communities. The question is not whether class warfare exists. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The relentless pursuit of profit has become a modern plague. Corporations, driven by short-term gains and shareholder demands, engage in practices that are both morally reprehensible and economically destructive. Mass layoffs, once a last resort, have become a routine tool of corporate management. Workers are treated as disposable commodities, cast aside with little regard for their livelihoods or the well-being of their communities. Adding insult to injury is the practice of stock buybacks. Instead of investing in their workforce, in research and development, or in expanding production, corporations are funneling trillions of dollars into repurchasing their own stock. This artificial inflation of share prices primarily benefits wealthy shareholders and corporate executives, further widening the chasm between the haves and the have-nots. The data is staggering. In 1981, stock buybacks accounted for a mere 2% of corporate profits. By 2016, that figure had ballooned to a staggering 68%. Between 2010 and 2019, American corporations spent an astronomical $6.5 trillion on stock buybacks. This is money that could have been used to raise wages, provide healthcare benefits, or invest in communities. Instead, it was used to line the pockets of the already wealthy. The tech industry, often touted for its innovation and dynamism, is a prime example of this rapacious greed. In just one quarter of 2022, tech giants Meta, Alphabet, and Microsoft collectively spent $28 billion on stock buybacks. This was shortly followed by mass layoffs, leaving thousands of workers jobless and scrambling for survival. The message is clear. Profits matter, people do not. The economic anxieties unleashed by corporate greed have profound political consequences. As working people see their jobs shipped overseas, their wages stagnate, and their communities crumble, they become increasingly disillusioned with the political establishment. Traditional parties, beholden to corporate donors, are seen as out of touch and unresponsive to the needs of ordinary citizens. This disillusionment creates a fertile breeding ground for extremism. Far-right movements, with their scapegoating of immigrants, minorities, and the liberal elite, offer simplistic solutions to complex problems. They tap into the anger and frustration of those who feel left behind, channeling it towards convenient targets. The rise of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement is a stark illustration of this phenomenon. The opioid epidemic, ravaging communities across America, is another tragic manifestation of this political fallout. As good-paying jobs disappear and social safety nets are shredded, people turn to drugs as a way to cope with the despair and hopelessness. The crisis is particularly acute in former industrial heartlands, where the promise of the American dream has turned into a nightmare. The decline in support for the Democratic Party in places like Mingo County, West Virginia, is telling. Once a Democratic stronghold, Mingo County saw its Democratic vote share plummet from 69.7% in 1996 to a paltry 13.9% in 2020. This dramatic shift underscores the failure of the Democratic Party to address the economic anxieties of the working class. Class warfare is not merely an economic phenomenon, it is also a cultural and psychological one. Stereotypes and prejudices about different social classes serve to divide us and make it harder to find common ground. The wealthy are often portrayed as out-of-touch elites, more concerned with their own enrichment than the well-being of society. The poor, on the other hand, are often stereotyped as lazy, undeserving, and responsible for their own plight. These stereotypes are not only inaccurate but also deeply damaging. They prevent us from seeing each other as human beings with shared hopes and dreams. They make it easier to dismiss the struggles of those different from ourselves. And they create a climate of resentment and mistrust that makes it difficult to address the root causes of inequality. A recent study published in the journal Frontiers found that lower-class individuals often hold negative stereotypes about the upper class, viewing them as competent but cold. This perception of the wealthy as lacking in warmth and compassion contributes to feelings of envy and resentment, further fueling class conflict. The study also found that individuals with limited belief in upward social mobility are more likely to hold these negative stereotypes. In other words, when people believe that the system is rigged against them, that they have little chance of improving their lot in life, they are more likely to view the wealthy with suspicion and hostility. Section 5. The Global Dimension: Imperialism's Enduring Grip. To fully comprehend the dynamics of class warfare, we must broaden our lens to encompass the global dimension. The exploitation of the global south by the global north is not a relic of the past. It is an ongoing reality that perpetuates global inequality and fuels conflict. While colonialism may be largely over, its legacy lives on in the form of neo-imperialism. This neo-imperialism takes many forms. It can be seen in the predatory lending practices of international financial institutions. It can be seen in the exploitation of cheap labor in developing countries. And it can be seen in the control of global commodity markets by a handful of powerful corporations. The global supply chain, while often touted as a marvel of efficiency, is often a conduit for exploitation. Workers in developing countries toil in sweatshops for poverty wages, producing goods that are then sold at exorbitant prices in the global north. The profits flow upwards, enriching corporations and consumers in wealthy nations while perpetuating a cycle of poverty and dependence in the global south. The denial of imperialism by some on the Western left is particularly troubling. To ignore the ongoing exploitation of the global south is to turn a blind eye to the suffering of billions of people. It is to perpetuate the very systems of oppression that we claim to oppose. Lenin's theory of imperialism, while formulated over a century ago, remains strikingly relevant today. Lenin argued that imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism, a system driven by the relentless pursuit of profit and the need for new markets. This drive for profit, Lenin argued, inevitably leads to the exploitation of weaker nations by stronger ones. In the heart of every struggling community lies a microcosm of despair. Here, the challenges faced are not just individual but collective, reflecting a broader societal malaise. It's a place where hope often seems like a distant dream, overshadowed by the harsh realities of daily life. But amidst this despair, there are those who dare to challenge the status quo. They are the brave souls who refuse to accept things as they are and strive for a better future. These individuals, through their actions and voices, ignite the spark of change, showing us that transformation is possible even in the most unlikely of places. This brings us to a crucial moment, a call to action. It's not enough to simply recognize the issues, we must act. Each of us has a role to play in building a more equitable and just society. Whether through small acts of kindness or larger systemic changes, our contributions matter. Together we can turn the tide and create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And now, a few words about the author. Known for his deep understanding of socio-economic issues, he has dedicated his life to shedding light on the struggles and triumphs of marginalized communities. His work continues to inspire and educate, reminding us of the power of storytelling in fostering empathy and driving social change.